So here we are, 120 days, 4 months later, and I've finished learning how to handstand. I'm going to take you through my experience, and the next few minutes will encompass my journey from start to finish. I also have every handstand attempt from my last day of learning later on in the video, so that you can see a typical day of practice for me now. Where to start? May 18th was my first day of handstands, and I really had no clue what I was getting myself into, and I just jumped straight into it. I thought this would be a very easy skill to learn and that it would take maybe a month, and as you can tell from the clips, I wasn't kicking up all the way at first because I was afraid of falling over onto my back. And in the beginning weeks, I improved really rapidly, and I was going from a complete beginner to holding maybe 1 4-second hold per hour session. Going from never having done a handstand to being able to hold one for a few seconds after just a couple hours of practice made me feel great, like I could conquer learning this in no time. Then, as the days passed by, going through my routine of waking up at 6 to practice handstands from 6:30 to 7:30 before work, my rapid progress was slowing, but it was still moving, and at many points throughout the next couple months, it felt as though I was actually regressing rather than progressing my ability. Throughout learning how to handstand, I constantly switched between going days without progress, followed by a couple days of a revolution where I would change a small aspect of my handstand and then do quite a bit better for a day or two, followed by going back to exactly where I was before. That sort of f***s with you a bit, going from finally feeling like you're making progress to then being exactly where you were before. I went through this cycle 6, 7, 8 times. I'd have a few days of practice where I couldn't hold handstands whatsoever, and then I'd realize that changing something about how I was doing them would help a lot, and then I would nail a few handstands that section, or maybe like 5 seconds or so, and maybe the next section too. And then that change I made wouldn't help anymore at all, and I'd be back to having multiple days, sometimes weeks, where I would just fall over instantly every attempt. These changes that I made were, as I remember them, in this order: pushing forward with my fingertips, pushing my shoulders up as much as I could, pushing even harder with my fingers, using my abs more, scrunching my fingers up to get more force pushing with them. Yeah, I know, I had the same revolution with my fingers multiple times, pulling my shoulders down and back, kicking my legs up in a specific way, using my abs even more, engaging posterior pelvic tilt, which is just rotating your hips forward, to finally just saying fuck it and not trying so hard and just go into it whatever way my body naturally wanted to. And the funny thing is that I did notice that not trying so hard and how I positioned my body seemed to help pretty early on, but I attributed that method to a less refined handstand. And as you can see in my second video, I talk about this and how I wanted to avoid banana handstands. And after giving it more of a chance, my form is actually really good. It's better when I'm not trying than when I am trying so hard. I'd estimate that about 50% of my practice days were just complete failures, where I didn't even hold one handstand for 5 seconds or longer. Every attempt was essentially just going up and then instantly coming right back down. And if I had to guess based on extrapolating data from my recordings, I attempted about 2,000 handstands, and out of those 2,000, approximately 1,500 of them were just instantly falling over, 300 were held for a couple seconds, about 150 were held for about 5 seconds, and 50 or so were held for a while, like 10 seconds in that range. Now that's changing dramatically, and as you'll see later in the video, that percentage of long handstands is increasing steadily. The irony is that the one thing that got me to consistently hold longer handstands and that genuinely made me feel comfortable being balanced upside down was just relaxing and not trying so hard. Everything I learned worked. All the techniques, push through my fingers, balance with my core, but rather than set everything up perfectly at the start of the handstand, I just had to go into it without thinking of my body positioning and just do what felt natural. Then when I was trying to balance, instead of really focusing on those areas, I just had to feel the balance, which sounds weird. I don't even know how to explain that. The funniest thing is that the one thought that got me to hold them more consistently was inspired by something I tell every partner I have when playing any kind of game involving throwing something. Some of you watching will know this. Usually it's beer pong, where I'll drunkenly tell my teammate, Our ancestors could literally throw spears into sprinting antelopes from 40 meters away. We can throw this ball into a cup a few feet away. Then we get all pumped up, we're all confident. We throw the ball, just completely miss the table. Where was I going with this? Right, so when I went to handstand, I thought to myself, I just have to balance. Like, literally, that's the only thing I have to do. Just balance upside down. Like, I don't have to worry about, my feet, anything. The only thing I have to do is just balance. And it worked. Like, what? And when I decided to start learning handstands, I never thought it would take me longer than learning to play chess blindfolded. Like, that never occurred to me. That didn't even make sense, but it's been like 3 times longer. Anyways, as we finish up this section showing my progress from start to finish, I've omitted the last day of practice, which I have later in the video. If you've been wanting to challenge yourself lately while simultaneously improving your fitness, this next section is for you. For anyone who's looking to learn how to handstand, here's my advice. 1. Especially at the beginning, take a day off in between training for recovery. Your wrists and hands will be experiencing a lot of stress, and resting a day will allow them to become stronger between training days. You can opt to visualize handstands in these days off if you still want to practice. 2. Focus, focus, focus. For the large majority of successful handstands that I held for around 10 seconds, I was dialed in and thinking only of succeeding on this particular handstand. I saw and felt myself holding it in my mind, and I was confident. 3. You can't care what people think. Unless you have an empty room filled with pillows, you're likely going to be practicing somewhere where someone can see you. If you're worried about people seeing you and what they think, you won't be able to focus on the handstand. I intentionally started off practicing right on the side of the road to get over this fear as quickly as I could. 4. Don't be afraid. Start off in the grass, so even if you completely butcher falling, you'll be fine. You'll find that when you fall backwards, you intuitively fall safely. You might end up on your back, but you won't get hurt. As you fall more often, you'll get very good at sticking the landing. Without ever thinking about it, my body now just twists in the right way so that I always land on my feet, no matter how I fall. Probably the dumbest advice I've seen on this is to try to land in a bridge. I'm pretty certain I'd seriously hurt myself trying that, so unless you guys are gymnasts, probably don't try that. Not being afraid just boils down to doing it despite being afraid. You must have courage at the start, but that fear will go away with time. 5. Experiment. There are some common practices that will help with your stability, and I'll include a diagram here pointing them out. After you've tried these and took some time to focus on each individual one, you may want to try varying them slightly. While having your hands close together is common advice, I've talked to people who said that having their hands a couple feet apart makes it easiest for them. 6. Record yourself and analyze your form. The last step is to record yourself completely from the side so you can see exactly what points your form is breaking down and you can work to correct those. For example, I noticed that my lower torso, so my legs down, was leaning way forward when I was kicking up, and that's what was causing me to fall over backwards. And from there, that's when I learned to keep my core really tight so that my legs would stay vertical and not dip forward. So record yourself, and if you can't figure out what's wrong, maybe show it to somebody you know that can handstand, and they can point out the areas of your form that need improvement. What you're seeing now is a full day of handstands. I recorded every attempt over a 1-hour session on my last day of learning. I figured rather than me tell you where I'm at with my learning, I would just show you. I know a lot of people who do this sort of thing on YouTube will just cut out the best attempts and show those just to give a false sense of perfection, to make it look like they've learned the thing perfectly. And because I know that some people will end up watching this who actually want to learn how to handstand, showing this will show them a realistic day so they don't get discouraged by seeing only successes. And this way you can see exactly the degree to which I've learned this over this time period. As you can see, I'm at the point where I can now hold around 10-second handstands pretty consistently. I say pretty consistently, but you can see that the kick up is still an area I'm improving at, getting to that point where I can kick up with the perfect amount of force more often. I have been improving at that quickly over the last week, and I think it's something that will come with more practice. I'm still going to practice them occasionally, but I'm going to put my focus on a new topic. Now, for some real advice. Here's the stuff that you simultaneously do and don't want to hear. With each video I make, I'm hoping that I can convince some of you watching to start learning something new. I know there's something that you've been wanting to learn, a project to start, maybe learning how to play the guitar, whatever it is, there's something. All I ask is that you start. I know you're busy, I know you have a lot going on right now, and that it's not the best time to start. It will never be the best time to start, and if you're waiting for the perfect time, it's not coming. I find a lot of the time we wait for some circumstance to come along that will lead us to starting that thing that we want, and you have to realize that the only thing standing between you and what you want is one decision. You're one decision away from changing whatever it is that you specifically want. Either pause the video or take a second once it finishes to think about this. What's the one thing that you've wanted to learn, and what's the excuse you've given yourself for why you haven't? Two very simple questions that might help you realize there's no reason why you can't start now. A prominent aspect of learning that I never see talked about is the honeymoon period. When you decide to start learning something new, you're full of excitement and eagerness. You're envisioning being able to do whatever skill it is, and you can't wait. Then you start learning it, and each day brings new knowledge and you improve rapidly. Eventually, that excitement from doing something novel runs out, and you're left to pick up the pieces of your prior enthusiasm. You're then left with three options. 1, you give up and find something new that arouses that same excitement. You can even come up with all kinds of reasons why it made sense to quit, and everyone around you will understand and accept those. 2, you can begrudgingly continue learning out of obligation, though this will likely lead to quitting outright or developing a resentment towards what you were once passionate about. Or 3, find excitement in the process and remind yourself why you started. Maybe this was a dream of yours to play a new instrument or to learn a new language, or maybe you just wanted to challenge yourself. Whatever you decide, it's necessary that you understand why you started or why you haven't started learning that thing that's important to you. Your why is what will get you through those times when you don't feel like showing up, and it's what will give you the motivation to succeed. And speaking of why, I have a strong one for my next learning topic, and as much as I want to tell you now, I'm going to keep it a surprise. Don't forget that I'll be capping off the 6-week period for the 2-minute sleeping technique next week, so don't forget to subscribe and click the bell so that you don't miss that video or the next one for my new learning topic. See you next week.